There we go. I knew there was a button.
Yeah.
There it is.
All right. So this picture, I thought we can start with our vision. And the goal is to be informal. If there's any questions, like what I want us to, by the end of this, I want everyone to understand what the be a disciple is about. So feel free to ask questions. Okay, so that's our vision. And what is a vision? A vision is something that whatever we do, it's geared for that. So whether we call it do an event, or whether we have a worship service, whether we have a retreat, whether we have our order of worship, we might have the praise leader come and lead the worship in the beginning. All that, it has to meet the purpose of the vision. Right? And so when we say be a disciple, make disciples, everything that we do as a church, it has to connect. If somebody can say, hey, Pastor saying, I don't think that's really connecting with the vision, then we're doing something erratic. It doesn't fit anymore. Right? So does it make sense? That's what a vision is. And so, okay, is that clear? Okay, so be a disciple and make disciples. There's two statements that I want our church to focus on. Everything we do must circle around that. Be a disciple and make disciples. You cannot, Jesus commanded us to make disciples, but you cannot make disciples unless you are a disciple. We need to know what a disciple is so that we can actually go do it. Make disciples. So that's what I'm hoping that we can cover here. Now, I started with this picture on the right. There's this guy. I think this is like the default go-to mode for a typical person. And tell me if I'm right. I think many people, that's what they dream about. To be able to just lay down and do nothing. And when I look at a lot of broken marriages, it seems like it's because the man decides to do this, and and then over time, I guess the wife tends to feel worried, like what's going on, what about our family, but then the guy doesn't take leadership, and and so I think this is the picture that we have today. A lot of people in action, not willing to take action. It's just leave me alone. I want to be an average Joe. I've asked some people, Christians or so-called Christians. I asked them, so what do you think, how do you think God is going to direct you, or where do you think God is going to lead you? They said, I just want God to leave me alone. I will just go to the worship service. I will join on Sundays, but, I don't want to do anything else. And, I think that's really drawing this picture. When you look at people like Abraham, we talked about many characters, right? And in those Bible characters, God is always sending them from somewhere to something. Like Abraham, all throughout his life, he was taken. Abraham said, "Yes, I will go, Lord," and he was taken to a land. He basically said, "I'm gonna go." He didn't know where he was going, right? And Jacob, no different. Moses, right? People that God uses, God works with, and that God calls, they're always moving. I think this is what a disciple is about. So I tried to picture the guy on the right. It's not to be that guy. It's not to say, resting is wrong. God created Sabbath for us because we do need to rest. But then in the big picture of things, we're always moving towards something. Usually, what it is God's call for us. Something great. And so, I thought this is a way to picture, this is not what a disciple is, what the world kind of pictures today. I think a lot of people have become lazy and self-centered, proud, and today, we got the YouTube and you got the Instagrams. I think this is the picture that we're getting. I want to be preoccupied with many things. Don't you see how busy I am? Where God wants to bring us somewhere much greater. Again, that's what a disciple is about, following. On the left, I tried to explain what is a disciple. Disciple by definition is somebody who's willing to learn. It's the Greek. It's just somebody who's willing to learn. And learner is something that is not really dependent on age. Like what I mean is I've seen older people who are still open to learning, while many older people, they do tend to say, I don't want to learn anymore. Don't you know how much knowledge and experience I have? But then again, you also see this in the younger generation. Don't you see how great I am? I already know. If you want to compare, like, are you a person who is willing to learn? Think if you get angry when somebody gives you a criticism, somebody points something out to you. Are you, like angry and how dare you say that? Or do you tend to be like, oh wow, okay, maybe, help me out. I don't know how to grow from here. So I think, so disciple is number one, a learner. That's just by definition. Disciples of Jesus were willing to learn from Jesus, right? And so the position of a disciple is, I'm willing to learn. And it's a lifelong process, just like Abraham, Moses, and everyone else, David, right? And then a learner is what? Is also humble. Now, the people that I tend to get into a lot of fights with, and I mean like verbal, confrontation, it tends to happen because they claim to be Christians, and when I look at their life, I'm thinking, that's not what a Christian should do, and they don't want to, they're not open to learning. You see, they have like this hard front. Don't you know, who are you to tell me? Right? Whereas I think a person who is willing to learn, who's open to learning, is always willing to accept information and certainly welcome it and be grateful when the Christian brother or sister points something out to them. And then a learner is available. This is what we kind of talked about earlier downstairs, right? If we're not available, we're not a learner. Period. You're probably tied up doing a lot of busy things. Make sense? So, a disciple is a learner. Disciple is a learner, but I also added in to his or her master, Jesus, right, and others. Is open to learning, very open to learning. And the second, the disciple is obedient. Disciple. When you have a disciple, you also have I guess the best word that we can use is master. But when you're saying I'm gonna be discipled by someone, you're following someone, right? So let's label that person master. And when the master says something, it doesn't make sense, we're still obedient. We just say, all right, you probably know what you're doing. So we're obedient, we follow, disciples follow. And then disciple imitates and become like that master over time. Disciple is not like, here, come to class, I'll give you a grade on how well you do on your exam. Disciple is somebody who kind of lives life with the master. Kind of like what I'm hoping for in our small groups. We see each other. We don't just meet once a week for an hour and then just see each other and we know nothing about each other. But as people who intimately grow together, you actually know about everything about each other, like what you do in a certain situation. You might, for example, see me take a phone call. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm supposed to curse at this guy, but maybe you see me not curse. Or maybe you see cursing, and it's I guess so then the disciple sees life, is actually doing life together with the master and imitates and becomes like the master over time. Disciple does life with the master and imitates and becomes like the master. And then fourth, the disciple does life together with other disciples. Jesus had several disciples and they did it together. So is that clear? So if you were to gauge yourself, where do you see yourself, as a disciple? Do you see these things happening in your life? Is this, does it connect? Or do you have ways to go? So I thought, there are times when like when I'm preparing a sermon, right? Like I don't know exactly what to talk about. Like, maybe I had a really busy schedule and my mind is like all fried up, right? And I'm thinking, all right, God, didn't I talk about enough? Like, what is there to talk about? I feel like I talked about it, and it's like I'm drawing a blank on what I'm supposed to talk about. And then I ask myself, all right, is our church the way Jesus wanted it to be? So I tend to ask this question about, like this question to get me to think, okay, so it didn't really reach this goal. So then now I have like this, now we think about, okay, now there's a lot of things to think about. I guess, what I'm getting at is, imagine you say, well, I'm doing all this. I go to small group, I go to church. I feel like I am doing, should I open that door? It's hot, right? I mean, just
Wait,
tell me
we
when
change
it's...
the temperature over there.
I changed it, but it's not going down. It doesn't turn on the AC, so...
I think some Airbnbs lock the temperature.
Oh wow.
No, my room downstairs you can change it.
Nice.
Wait, that one you just have to.
Airbnb in Catskills.
We could do it. I mean, it was incremental.
I did change it, just so you know. It's just it doesn't cool. It only heats at this winter season. So then I asked this question: if you ever find yourself stuck, like I feel like I'm doing all this, aren't I a disciple of Jesus? Then I want you to ask yourself, does my life resemble the life of Jesus? I want you to now pit your life against the life of Jesus. Then I think you'll realize, oh, yeah, I guess not. I guess there's some ways to go. I think these questions actually help me to kind of get me off the lock. Like, I'm thinking, okay, I think I'm doing great. I think it causes us to reach a little more, to think, okay, I can be a better disciple. And the second question I want you to ask is my life worth imitating? Jesus says, follow me. And Apostle Paul says, follow me as I imitate Christ. And I share the same thing. Follow me as I imitate Christ. Right? And it's a question that you need to ask, because some of you are small group leaders, some of you will be leading small groups, right? Small group members are going to look up to you, right? And you should be able to say, imitate me as I imitate Christ, as I imitate Jesus, my master. Right? And then the next part I put, so if you do feel like, if you recognize that you need to grow, what are some practical things to do? Learn the life of Jesus and his way of life. Learn how he did discipleship, and learn how he lived, so that you can model after what he did, and that's called the Bible. Right? We need to read the Bible. And then let your interactions with God change you. That's through prayers, and then you interact with one another, and you can a little bit longer, but in your small groups, let your interactions change you. Let your interactions help you to grow, to answer that question, does my life resemble the life of Jesus? Is my life worth imitating? And then take action. Don't be that default go-to mode for a typical person. Instead, take action, listen to God, live the life that God desires of you, pursue his kingdom, then everything in your life will be well. That's the promise I give you. That's in the Bible. And whenever you mess up, just repent. It's that easy. Just say, hey, God, I'm sorry I messed up. I want to be a better disciple. It's okay. Let's look at the verses. So today, I picked Matthew 16, 21 through 28 for to be a disciple. And we have 6 of us. But let's see. Let's read one verse at a time, please. John, start us off. 21.
From then on, Jesus began to tell his disciples plainly that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem, and that he would suffer many terrible things at the hands of the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He would be killed, but on the 3rd day he would be raised from the dead.
But Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. Heaven forbid you, Lord, he said. This will never happen to you.
Jesus turned to Peter and said, "Get away from me, Satan. You are a dangerous trap to me. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's."
And Jesus said to his disciples, "If any of you wants to be my follower, you must turn from your selfish ways, take up your cross, and follow me."
If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it.
John 26.
And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul?
For the Son of Man will come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and will judge all people according to their deeds.
And I tell you the truth, some standing here right now will not die before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom.
Amen. Thank you. Now, the disciples were, they saw, Jesus said, "Follow me" one day, and Peter followed, and all these other disciples followed. There's stories about each one, right? But they all followed thinking, wow, Jesus has a great life for me. I should follow this master. Well, what does that great life look like? They pictured it as, in their culture too, they needed money, they needed power. And they're Jewish people, and the Jewish people knows about when God sends a Messiah, shouldn't there should be a world power like King David. King David's nation was the most powerful in the world. The most powerful, no country would even compare to it. And so the Jews, they were looking for that. And so when Jesus pulled each one, I think that's what they were looking for. And I wonder if some of you also are thinking that way too, about you following Jesus. I'm a disciple of Jesus, he's going to get me the best job and get me up the highest rank and get me the best position, get me the best car, best guy with lots of money and but Jesus, so this is why Peter was so shocked. Right, so verse 21, it goes, from then on, Jesus began to tell his disciples plainly that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem, that he would suffer many terrible things at the hands of the elders, leading priests, the teachers of the religious law. He would be killed. What? I think, from there, I think Peter missed the next sentence altogether, that he would be raised from the dead. Like, that doesn't even comprehend, right? What does it mean to be raised from the dead? I don't have that. That doesn't even connect to me, right? But then Peter is hearing this thing about Jesus is going to die. I followed you for 3 years already. You can't die. I mean, that would take away all my hopes of being rich, being wealthy. So Peter took Jesus aside, verse 22, and began to reprimand him. Jesus, you can't do this. This will never happen to you. I will never allow it. And then verse 23, Jesus turned to Peter. Get away from me, Satan. I don't know how you would feel if God were to ever say that to you. Because we too can be influenced by the culture of the world, right? Our world. We too can easily think, oh, well, yeah, I guess, I follow you, Jesus, so I'm supposed to get the best car and best house and best everything. And what Jesus is saying, don't do that. Don't let Satan grab a foothold. Your desire is not really this world. Your pursuit is not this world, though I will give it to you. Again, I want to point back to Matthew 6:33 because I think this is such a valuable verse for all of us, especially those who are seeking the next steps for your life. Anyone? It says, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. It's saying God will take care of all of your needs when you trust him. And here, but don't let that be your desire. Don't let that be your pursuit. Let Jesus be your pursuit. He will take care of the rest. A disciple would trust the master, not the gifts. So get away from me, Satan. You're a dangerous trap to me. You are seeing things from merely a human point of view, not from God's. Because Peter wanted that power too. And Satan was probably saying the same thing. I'll give you all this power. Remember when Jesus fasted for 40 days, after he was baptized? Satan was saying, I can give you the world, just bow down to me. You're hungry, make the stone to bread. And Jesus would not take that. It's man's or Satan's point of view. It's the world's cultural view. And so we gotta be careful when we think about the cultural trends. Okay, those are the ways they can pull us away from being a disciple of Jesus, and not from God's. Because what was Jesus' purpose here on earth? It was to die for us, for you and me. And so, not dying, Peter saying, no, you're not gonna die, that was not in Jesus' plans. Jesus intended to die. Right? And because he cares about us. For God so loved the world, the people of the world, God so loved you and me that he sent his one and only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, to die for us. So then, after he said that to Peter, verse 24, then Jesus said to his disciples, this is what you ought to do. You are my disciples, this is what I want you to do. If any of you wants to be my follower, my disciple, what do you have to do? Turn from your selfish ways. It's call to die to our desires, die to the things that we would pursue.
should we do?
What should we do?
Nothing.
I'll do it. I want to watch their food too anyway. So, let's
Pause.
pause right there. Okay.
Where's the button?
Everyone has a story?
You missed the stories. But let me just kind of recap though. Everything we do as a church has to follow a vision. Whether it be holding a service, doing a retreat, doing events. And our vision is 2 words. Be a disciple and make disciples. We certainly have the command to make disciples, but when we don't know what it means to be a disciple, we can't make disciples. And so today I want to talk about be a disciple. This is meant to be interactive, so feel free to ask questions. By the end of this, my hope is that everybody understands what it means to be a disciple. And then we will cover make disciple in another session. Alright, so we were looking at the verses. We were on verse 24. Let's read start from 24. So Jesus said to Peter, Jesus said to his disciples, all of them, after yelling at Peter, get away from me, Satan. Right? If any of you wants to be my follower, what do you have to do? Turn from your selfish ways. Die to yourself, die to your desires, but look to God's desires. Okay, instead of your own personal selfish way, like that guy in the picture, right? The guy, it's like, it's all about me, I want my rest. Instead, turn from your selfish ways. Okay. And the second is take up your cross. Take up the cross. Take up the cross. When we say take up the cross, it's referring to what? Dying. Today we wear like jewelries and whatever that has the cross, we have it on our churches. But the cross, even at that time, was just dying. Be ready to die. If you want to be my follower, don't be selfish. Don't look to your own ways, and die. And be ready to die. Take up the cross. Then follow me. Imitate me. Be like me. Walk with me. Because if you try to hang on to your life, which many people do, I was just talking with one of the, one of the people. I was talking with someone. He was saying, I work on the weekends, but I try to spend a lot of time during the week looking for jobs, and I really gotta focus on looking for work because that's a full-time job. I agree. Today is the really difficult economy, but I see him as trying to hang on to his life. Where again, my recommendation to all of you, wherever you may be, is seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. He'll take care of all of that. Right? So if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. You really won't get that far. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? And here I would say this is pointing to your relationship with God, your eternal connection with God. Because is anything worth more than your soul? For the Son of Man will come with his angels in the glory of his Father and will judge all people according to their deeds. And I tell you the truth, some standing here right now will not die before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So here, where Peter was seeking this world power. Jesus, you're gonna bring this kingdom for us. You're gonna put me in positions of power. I'll be your second lieutenant. But Jesus is saying, no. If you're gonna follow me, you're going to turn from your selfish ways, be ready to die, and follow me. And then Jesus is saying on verse 28, my kingdom is coming. My kingdom is coming. Alright, so I want to point to being a disciple. It connects to the first commandment, so you can go down the third paragraph or something, right? Connection to the first commandment. Many of you know the first commandment, which is love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. And strength is actually missing here. In Deuteronomy is strength. Because the Ten Commandments and everything that's in the Old Testament, everything about the law, it all follows this: love God. And then second is like it, love one another. So when we talk about being a disciple, it's pointing to love God. Are you willing to love God? With all your heart. above your desire for money or boyfriend, girlfriend, or a spouse or degrees or positions, right? Are you willing to love God above all that, much further than all that? Are you willing to do that? That's what it means to be a disciple. Are you willing to follow Him? Give up everything you have if you have to follow Him. Okay, so I hope it's clear what it means to be a disciple. It's a follower of Jesus, right? And your following Jesus takes such high priority that everything else, even second place, just doesn't even compare to the first place priority that you have. Okay, that's what it means to be a disciple. But here are some reasons why people fail to be disciples. I'm talking about people who claim to be Christians. They say, I'm a disciple, I go to church. Right? So number one, I say, is not counting the cost. Discipleship, it means to give up everything you have. When God demands something, you would be able to give it up. Abraham did that. Right? He was given this one son. All his life, he's been looking forward to the son, and then God says, kill him. And he was ready to do it. Right? But people don't count the cost. They think, well, if I go to church, if I do these things, isn't that enough? And then when God demands something of them, they say, no, I can't do that. I don't know if God would ever tell you, put in an offering for $10,000. I don't know how many of you would be willing to just do that if you felt God was telling you to do that. And so, count the cost. I think people do not count the cost. So Peter had a hard time at this time, right, to turn away from the cultural desires and pursuits. Just like, we talk about the American dream, the money, power, fame, relationships, right? Peter wanted that world power, and Jesus had to rebuke him for that. Count the cost. What about losing your pride as we look to God and care for others? What about trials? Jesus says you will have trials. Jesus says, you will be persecuted because they first persecuted me. Are you guys willing to accept that? Again, if you go back to this average Joe, that was the default go-to man that I pictured, he probably won't go through trials. That's what he says. He's saying, God, leave me alone. I just want to be left alone. I will go to church. I will attend service, but just leave me alone. Don't let me be. Don't take me to like the promised land. Don't let me be like Abraham. I don't like it when you tell me about stuff like Abraham, Jacob. Just leave me alone. I just want to be an average Joe, right? And what this person is saying, I'm not willing to endure trials. Don't give me anything that's hard. Just let me be. Just give me enough money, But that's not recognizing that he is called to be a disciple. And then, when you say you're a disciple of Jesus, you're saying you're a Christian, you're a follower of Christ. And we're going to talk about this in future sessions, but it means that you will be disciplined by one another. Because I'll give you a little hint. Christians are meant to judge one another. And I'll break that apart later on. It means that, you go into a small group, you actually see how each other are living, and you should be able to point each other out when somebody's falling towards sin. That's actually an act of love. And so when you say, I'm willing to be a disciple of Jesus, you're actually opening up your life, willing to share your life and let people point things out about you. Okay? And I think people fail to count that cost. And if you're, any of you, if you are unwilling to count that cost, maybe you're not a disciple of Jesus. Okay, second, missing the point of loving God and others, being in relationship and following the ruling culture. And this is the point of the religious people that I've been talking about. I am concerned that our church is still very religious. Okay, what I mean by that is, we come on Sundays and that's as far as we go. I recognize that we do have small groups, and I'm grateful that you guys are meeting. But I wonder if we're truly getting to know each other, getting deeper, and then we're growing together. And so let's talk about this religious concept. Religious people are compartmentalized, and tell me if you are compartmentalized. So Luke 18, it talks about stories about a Pharisee who says, if I just do this, then I tithe and I go to church and I give more than anyone else. I'm better than this beggar. Don't you see? God, shouldn't you bless me? I think that's the mentality of many churchgoers today. Disciples of Jesus, they have integrity. I think this integrity is what's missing in today's world today. Integrity, definition, is what? It's one. Whole. Your life as a whole. Now, when I talk about religious people being compartmentalized, what I'm saying is on Sunday, they put on their Instagram face. I'm good, hey, I'm holy. They dress up nicely, they come. But then the rest of the week, they don't think about God. God is like the last priority for them. Oh, don't you know I gotta work? Don't you see how busy I am? Don't you see how I gotta do all these things? They're compartmentalized. Sunday, for 1 hour in the week, they're a Christian. But the rest of the time, they're no different than anyone else. When we have integrity, all our life is the same. Whether we're working, whether we're, with our friends, whether we're, whatever we're doing, whether we're studying, we're always the same person. We're faithful believers, disciples of Jesus Christ. So, question to you is, do you have integrity? This might answer your religious question. Are you religious, or do you value your relationship with God and one another? And I just wanted to point to some practical things that I didn't get to mention on last week's sermon. Alright, so these you can even find in the sermon slides from last week. There was a guy who says, Jesus, I will follow you. So Matthew 8, I'm going to just quickly summarize. I will follow you, Jesus. I'm willing to follow you, give up everything I got, but let me go bury my dead. What he's saying is, let me go deal with some of the cultural things. Jesus, I'm not really ready to follow you right now, but I will. Give me a year, give me some time, then I will follow you. It's people who follow the religion. I think what we tend to many of us. How many of you have grown up in a church from when you were young? Yeah. So you kind of know how church is supposed to work, and so you think, okay, then I'll just do that. I will do the relationship thing later when I have time, right? That's what this is talking about. This guy was saying, Jesus, I'm willing to do everything, but let me go bury my dead. But Jesus says, foxes have dens to live in, birds have nests. But do you know, if you really want to follow me right now, I have no place to lay my head. I'm gonna die soon. They're gonna kill me soon. Are you really gonna follow me? And that's the question that is being asked. But many people will say, well, I will follow the cultural way. It's fine. Right? And then, so second bullet, not taking action because others don't, right? You're looking at other people, oh, others are not doing it, so I shouldn't do it either. Whereas disciples of Jesus would immediately listen when Jesus says to do something, immediately obey. Right? Their life is not set apart for God, but rather they sometimes like money, sometimes look at other people for fame or popularity or to fit in. Right? But disciples of Jesus, they will act differently because when God directs them to do something that's out of the ordinary, we would do it. And that's what disciples do. And then disciples would believe in the impossible. If, I don't know how God's going to get me, any of you, a mate. I don't know how God's going to get me the job or the next contract. But then the religious people will say, they will count the cost and say, it doesn't seem like God's going to give me that job, so I'm not going to do it. Whereas disciples, they recognize that whatever God tells them to do, it's weird. But you know what? I will trust God. I will trust God to take care of my needs. Okay, and then another thing is, if any of you come to church week after week expecting the same old thing, right? Oh, I've attended, I've done my deed. So I hope that helps, evaluate the religiousness and the follower, a disciple of Jesus. The 2 paragraphs down, follower of Jesus, are people who want to change, who are always ready to learn, right? God is feared, and thoughts of God occur throughout the day. You're always thinking about God. Everything you do, you're thinking about how God is there with you. You don't go into your private area and say, God doesn't see me here. God is always in your mind. He's your priority, He's your master. And the second, you want to do God's work. You want to do kingdom work as a disciple of Jesus. And you love others because you recognize how much God loved you. And so you're willing to spend time with others too. And you're willing to give up anything because you recognize how much God has given you, you're willing to give up anything for others. any questions, I guess, from here? I mean, I hope this makes it clear what it means to be a disciple. It's a very hard calling, right? I hope we all see this and we accept the call. Because God will take care of us. As much as, the world teaches about, you gotta get the education, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, you gotta get your LinkedIn updated, but when we trust God, He will take care of all that. So lastly, so what can we do? If any of you feel like you're religious, and you need to break out of that so that you can be a disciple of Jesus, what do you need to do? Love God together. First is together, because without anyone to judge you, this is the problem that I kind of shared last week, where people want to hide out. They want to work jobs that's late in the hour so that nobody in their family sees them. None of their friends would see them. And so when they happen to pass a friend, they'll just say, yeah, I've been so busy, and just kind of get by. But when we are a disciple of Jesus, we do it together, which means we see each other, we're able to point each other out. So without the judgment of one another, you will feel okay when you're really not, when you really should be growing. Without the guidance of one another, you may not know what to do when you don't hear from God, because sometimes God speaks through others for the guidance that you need. Without the grace from one another to cover you when you fail, to weep and laugh together, you will likely give up. We need one another. And disciples give themselves to other brothers and sisters and humbly submit to one another. How do we stop being religious? Spend time with God, read scriptures, prayer, be available to God, and then meet more often. Okay, this is hard. I know today is hard, right? We all live, especially our group, we have people living in Connecticut, New Jersey, and south in New Jersey, right? But figure it out. This is where I think we need to get on our knees and say, God, I want to be a disciple. I want to share my life. I want to be an influence to others as much as be influenced by other believers too. So Father, help me to be available to others. Help us to meet more often. I don't know how to do that. And obey when God directs you. Okay, 3 things. Alright, any questions about being a disciple? Is it clear what your call is? Alright. So I want us to go into prayer. Let's evaluate our life. I mean, seriously, think about, ask that question to yourself. Does my life today resemble the life of Jesus? Is my life worth imitating? Ask that question and bring that up to God and just let Him know where you are. Okay, let's get there. I recognize I wonder if my time and priority elsewhere, I should be thinking about you. Father, I recognize that sometimes I get busy too. God, I'm not available to you, I'm not available to others. And I just tell people I'm busy, which seems to be an accepted term today. Father, help us to be a disciple. Lord, help us to be a disciple. It's absolute against the way that the culture wants, or culture thinks a Christian should be. Father, to grow in love with you, to grow in love with one another, to grow together. Father, to be a learner. Father, how hard my heart becomes, Father. I might talk my degrees, I might talk my experiences and my positions. And Father, I might harden my heart. Lord, soften our heart, Father, that we may be a fluid disciple. Who's always willing to learn, who's willing to grow, who's willing to obey. Father, you called us to make disciples, Father, but we can't until we become a disciple ourselves. And Lord, we want to commit our lives to you, Father. Lord, Lord, help me to learn from you. Help me to hear from you. And Lord, do what you want me to do. I want to imitate you. I want to be able to say, imitate me, because I follow as I imitate Christ. Lord, I recognize how much of a failure I am there, and God, I don't know how it's supposed to work. In this crazy world, in this crazy time, Father, I think the younger generation also has it harder. And it's time, Father, can you cause us to not be religious, or which, many people think what a Christian should look like, but Father, truly be your disciple, who loves you with all their heart, Father, all their heart, soul, and mind, strength, Father, to not even have a second place, priority, that even compares to loving you, to following after you. Father, I thank you for what you're doing. Lord, teach us what it means to be a disciple throughout the retreat. Lord, point to us, Father, anything where our hearts are hard, and let us be your disciple, so that, Lord, we can make disciples. Thank you for everything, God. Glorify in Jesus' name.